Hey guys, tonight we drift into a place where the air smells faintly of wet earth and wood smoke, where the ground beneath your feet is not really ground at all, but an island floating in a high mountain lake, and where the skyline is crowded, not by skyscrapers, but by pyramids, tiered in red and white. You are in Tenochtitlan, the jewel of the Aztec Empire. Imagine waking up here, in a city so dazzling that Spanish chroniclers later said it outshone anything they had ever seen in Europe. But before you get too comfortable, here's the reality check. You probably wouldn't survive a single day. Between strict social codes, an unforgiving legal system, and religious expectations that involve offerings of both flowers and, well, let's just say sometimes more than flowers, your odds are grim. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your location and the local time in the comments. I always love seeing where in the world everyone is listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to the pale gold of dawn sliding across the waters of Lake Texcoco. The first sound is the creak of a reed mat as you sit up, followed by the distant calls of waterfowl echoing between the mountains. The air is thin, the altitude pressing on your lungs. Tenochtitlan, founded less than 2 centuries ago, already houses perhaps 200,000 souls, bigger than London at the same time. Every rooftop you see is alive with movement. Women grinding maize on metates, children scurrying for water, men readying for the day's labors. The smell of masa warming on griddles mixes with the temps of lake mud. You shuffle out into the courtyard, blinking at the brightness. The sun climbs quickly here, and there's no glass in your windows to soften it. A neighbor greets you, not with good morning, but with a reminder about your duties because, in this world, idleness is suspicious. Laziness is not just frowned upon, it is a punishable offense. Historians still argue whether that was rigorously enforced or mostly symbolic, but either way, you'd best look busy. The city pulses awake around you. Picture Venice, but with sharper edges. Causeways stretch like arms from the island to the mainland, each fitted with removable bridges. These aren't just engineering marvels, they're military defenses. If invaders approach, whole spans can be lifted, turning Tenochtitlan into a floating fortress. You step onto one and immediately feel the sensation of water pressing on both sides. Canoes dart like taxis, laden with baskets of chilies, fish, or firewood. The lake itself is divided into brackish and freshwater zones, thanks to an enormous Daikan early piece of civil engineering that channels drinkable water into the city. Ingenious, yes, but fragile. One breach and the whole system fails, as later floods proved. As you walk, you notice how neatly the streets align. This isn't random sprawl, but deliberate urban planning. The Mexica designed their city in quadrants, each tied to ritual meaning. Even the markets are in designated plazas. And if you wander into the wrong neighborhood, you'd better know the local customs. Imagine wandering into a sports bar in the wrong team's jersey. Except here, the punishment might be a beating or worse. Down one canal, you glimpse a floating gardener, chinampa. These ingenious rafts of mud and reeds turn lake surface into farmland. Corn, beans, and squash grow in tight rows, their roots dangling into water rich with nutrients. You think, what a clever way to get around limited land. But step onto one without permission, and suddenly you're accused of theft. And theft in this empire, that's a fast track to enslavement. You didn't think stealing a zucchini could ruin your life, but here, it just might. Your stomach grumbles, but the smells around you are both inviting and strange. Roasting maize is familiar enough, but the tang of roasted insects catches you off guard. A vendor scoops up a handful of toasted grasshoppers Chapuline's end, offers them with a grin. You hesitate. He pops a few into his own mouth to prove they're safe, crunchy like kettle chips. You're suddenly aware that refusing food might be taken as rude. So, you chew, not bad nutty. Salty, but you wash it down quickly with a gulp of cool water drawn from a clay jug. Of course, there's a risk. Untreated water here sometimes carries parasites. Congratulations, you might have just doomed yourself by trying to be polite. As the sun climbs, the heat intensifies. You feel sweat bead on your neck, but around you, locals seem unfazed. That's because many of them carry little bundles of herbs used as deodorant and insect repellent. One quirky tidbit. Some Aztec elites are rumored to have used crocodile dung mixed with honey as a kind of primitive sunscreen. Whether that was widespread or just a bizarre anecdote is debated. But imagine trying to rub that on before work. Better to get sunburnt, you think. Suddenly, a drumbeat rolls across the city. You freeze. That sound isn't random, it marks time, summons laborers, or begins ceremonies. Everyone around you reacts instantly. You're reminded that this isn't just a city. It's a machine, ticking according to rhythms you don't yet understand. Miss a cue and you stand out. Standing out in this empire is rarely a good thing. You edge toward the great plaza, the heart of Tenochtitlan. Here, the ground seems to quake with energy. The twin temples rise above all, steps leading skyward, their tops crowned with shrines to Tlaloc, god of rain, and Huitzilopochtli, god of war and the sun. The stone still smells faintly of blood baked into it over countless rituals. Children laugh nearby, chasing each other around a fountain, completely unbothered. To them, this is just home. To you, it's a reminder that this empire is built on both maize and sacrifice, on everyday life and extraordinary demands. And even though you've barely made it to breakfast, you already feel the weight of survival pressing down. The city is beautiful, yes, but it's also sharp-edged. Like obsidian, a stone the Aztecs knew well, and one you'll see plenty of soon enough. The sun has climbed higher now, and its light dances on the surface of Lake Texcoco like a sheet of hammered silver. You squint as you step off the packed dirt of your neighborhood and onto one of the main causeways. This isn't just a road, it's a lifeline. Imagine a ribbon of stone stretching out across the lake, wide enough for a dozen people to walk abreast, yet broken up by wooden bridges that can be hauled away in moments. That's security against raiders, but also a daily inconvenience if you're carrying firewood or baskets of maize. You might find yourself waiting while canoes pass through before the bridge planks are set back down. You take a cautious step, and suddenly you hyper-aware that falling off the side means tumbling into water that's not exactly pristine. Some parts of the lake are brackish, salty, and undrinkable, while others are fresh thanks to the dike system built decades earlier. Historians still argue whether that dike was as effective as some chroniclers claimed, but for you, all it means is that a wrong splash could land you in a mouthful of slimy reeds and a lecture about disrespecting the gods of the waters. The causeway hums with activity. Men push handcarts of maize, women carry clay pots balanced on their heads, and barefoot children dart dangerously close to the edge, as if daring the lake to swallow them. A canoe bumps against the stone edge, its paddler calling out offers of fresh fish tilapia, wriggling in woven baskets, silver scales flashing. You realize quickly that traffic jams existed long before cars. Here, they're just wetter. You pause to let a group of porters pass. Each man carries a bundle bigger than his own torso, tied with a tumpline across his forehead. These tameems are human freight trucks, and without them, the city would starve. It's a tough job, but it comes with a strange perk. The law protects porters from harassment. If you mess with one, you're not just rude, you're legally in trouble. That might comfort you. But it also means that if someone shoves you aside into the water while saving a porteress load, well, nobody's on your side. Your stomach growls, but before food, you're thirsty. You spot a water carrier, someone lugging clay jugs sloshing with fresh lake water drawn from the Chinampas irrigation channels. It looks refreshing, but you hesitate. Locals seem fine drinking it, but your modern immune system is likely doomed. The irony is almost comical. You're standing in the middle of a vast lake, surrounded by water you can't safely drink. It's like living in a juice bar, but being lactose intolerant. The wind shifts, carrying with it a faint odor of sewage. That's because canals double as garbage dumps in some neighborhoods. City officials employ sweepers to scoop out waste, but not every canal gets equal attention. One quirky tidbit: some of that waste doesn't go unused, shoveled onto Chinampas as fertilizer. Efficient, yes. But let S just say it. S, not the image you wanted in your head, while eyeing those shiny green chilies at market. As you continue, you find yourself distracted by the view. To the east, snow-capped volcanoes pierce the horizon. To the west, the city unfurls in dazzling symmetry: streets, canals, bridges, all aligned with careful precision. It's beautiful enough to make you forget your sore feet. But your daydreaming is cut short by the sound of shouting. Ahead, a canoe tips precariously, its cargo of firewood tumbling into the lake. A boy scrambles to retrieve it, while his father curses the loss. The wood is valuable without it. Cooking tonight will be impossible. You offer to help, but immediately regret it. One wrong move, and you're chest deep in foul-smelling water. The boy laughs at your hesitation. For him, this is routine. For you, it's another reminder. You're not built for this world. The causeway ends in a bustling checkpoint. Guards eye the crowds carefully, ensuring no one sneaks in goods without paying tribute. Their obsidian-tipped spears glint in the sunlight. You notice how casually they rest their hands on them, like modern cops fiddling with batons. You're waved through, but not before one guard sniffs the air near you and mutters something about foreign sweat. You hope he was joking, but judging by his glare, probably not. Now you descend into the maze of canals that crisscross the heart of Tenochtitlan. Canoes bump shoulder to shoulder, like bumper cars in a watery amusement park. You clamber into one, heart pounding as it rocks violently beneath your weight. The paddler, a wiry woman with sun-darkened skin, rolls her eyes. Sit still, she snaps, and you do, clutching the sides like a terrified tourist on a roller coaster. The canoe glides forward, smooth as silk once she gets going. Around you, the waterway is alive with noise. Hawkers shouting about chilies and salt. Children singing rhymes, dogs barking from the banks. Above, clotheslines stretch across narrow alleys, dripping with dyed cotton tunics. The air is a heady cocktail of roasting maize, sweat, incense, and fish guts. You try to relax, letting the paddle's rhythm lull you. But then, a dead fish bobs up beside the canoe, and you realize once again that this place doesn't pause to cater to your comfort. People live, eat, wash, and dump in the same waters. It's miraculous that the system functions at all, yet somehow it does. Tenochtitlan isn't chaos. It's carefully managed intensity. One slip, though just one careless mistake and the water swallows you whole. As you disembark at the next landing, your legs wobble. The paddler snorts with amusement. "First time?" she asks. You mumble something about being new. She shakes her head, muttering, "Not for long," then, before pushing off again into the traffic of canoes. You can't tell if she meant you'll get used to it, or that you won't survive long enough to matter. The dock creaks under your feet as you step off the canoe and into the tide of bodies funneling toward the great market of Tlatelolco. You thought you'd seen crowds before sports arenas, New Year's Eve gatherings, but this is different. Here, it isn't about spectacle, it's survival. Tens of thousands of people push through the plaza, each intent on trading maize for obsidian, or cotton for cacao, or fish for salt. This place is so immense that Spanish witnesses later swore it rivaled any market of Europe. And you're already lost before you even start shopping. The first thing that hits you is the smell. Picture roasted maize mixing with the sharp tint of chili, the sweet richness of cacao froth, and, threading through it all, the unmistakable funk of dried fish. It's overwhelming, like someone blended together a food festival, a pet store, and a hardware shop. You try to breathe shallowly, but then a puff of copal incense drifts past, soothing, earthy, masking the harsher scents. The relief is brief, because immediately afterward, someone thrusts a basket of live turkeys in your face. They flap and squawk indignantly. "Welcome to shopping day." You shuffle sideways, trying not to trip over a dog stretched lazily across the ground. Nobody seems to mind it. Doze, the only one who nearly goes sprawling. Around you, people carry woven mats that serve as temporary stalls. Vendors set them down, lay out their goods, and suddenly a shop appears. Forget permanent storefronts. This is commerce on the move, and every inch of the plaza is alive with exchange. Coins don't exist here. Instead, cacao beans jingle in little pouches. Their value precise enough that you could buy a rabbit with a few dozen, or a canoe with a few thousand. Cotton cloaks, finely woven, serve as higher value tender. Historians still argue whether this barter-around currency blend was efficient or chaotic. But judging from the buzzing energy around you, it works. You reach into your pouch. Wait, you don't have one. Rookie mistake. You're here to observe, but without currency, you're already suspicious. People glance at you, wondering why you're browsing without paying. You drift toward a stall where a woman offers tamales steaming in corn husks. Your mouth waters, but when you try to mime hunger, she narrows her eyes. In this market, manners matter. There are officials patrolling, judges in plain cotton who enforce fairness. Cheat a customer, overcharge, or even just argue too loudly, and you can be hauled to a corner of the plaza where disputes are settled immediately. Public humiliation, fines, or worse. Imagine Walmart with live-in referees. You gulp and back away. Across the aisle, a man sells obsidian blades so sharp they can split a hair. He slices through a piece of paper, thin maguey fiber, to demonstrate. You reach to touch, and he slaps your hand away before you slice a finger open. He scolds you in Nahuatl, but the meaning is clear. "Look, don't touch." You mutter an apology, but he's already turned to another customer. Muttering something about clumsy foreigners, the crowd surges again, and you're swept toward the animal section. Cages of rabbits twitch nervously, while turkeys gobble in complaint. Overhead, parrots squawk in vivid greens and reds, the strangest sight of all. A man proudly showing off a cage of axolotls, those otherworldly salamanders, with feathery gills waving like tiny flags. Their food here, a delicacy. You marvel at their weird cuteness, then wince as another shopper points to one with a grin, negotiating its price in cacao beans. Dinner and pet shop rolled into one. A sudden roar erupts, and you freeze. It isn't anger, it's laughter. A juggler in the entertainment section tosses 3 balls of fruit into the air while balancing on a plank of wood. Around him, children clap, women smile, and even stern-faced men pause to watch. For a moment, the harshness of commerce softens into joy. You find yourself clapping too, though you stop quickly. Better not draw attention to yourself as an outsider enjoying the wrong act. You try to edge toward the clothing stalls, where piles of woven cotton glow in brilliant reds, yellows, and blues. Feathers shimmering Quetzal greens and macaw scarlets glitter like jewels. They're luxury items, and you realize instantly that you can afford them even if you had a pouch full of cacao. Only nobles can flaunt certain colors or feathers. Wear the wrong thing and you risk punishment. The vendors don't even glance your way, knowing you're not a real buyer. It's a little like walking into a designer boutique in your gym shorts. Your ears pick up snippets of bargaining. One man argues heatedly over a bundle of firewood, his voice rising. Instantly, an official materializes, stern-faced, demanding calm. The 2 men lower their tones immediately, bowing their heads in respect. You blink in surprise. No shouting matches, no brawls. The market is massive, but order is maintained with an iron hand. A quirky tidbit. Some sources say professional market police worked in shifts to ensure nothing spiraled into chaos. You glance around, half expecting one to grab you for loitering. Your stomach growls again. Against better judgment, you grab a tortilla stuffed with beans from a street vendor and hand over. Nothing. Oops. The vendor glares, and the crowd around you stills. You panic, fumbling for a trade. A woman nearby laughs at your desperation and tosses the vendor a handful of cacao beans. Pay her back later, she mutters. You nod furiously, grateful. Lesson learned. In Tlatelolco, generosity is rare, and you owe a stranger a debt. By the time you stagger toward the plaza's edge, your senses are fried. The colors, the smells, the noises, too much. You wonder how locals do this daily without collapsing. But for them, it's survival, ritual, and routine all at once. For you, it's proof you're already out of your depth. Your head is still buzzing from the market when a savory smell curls into your nose, tugging you toward a food stall by the canal. The sun is climbing toward its peak, and the city is beginning to shimmer with heat. You're sweaty, your feet ache, and all you want is something comforting to eat. Fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, food in Tenochtitlan is never just fuel. It's ritual, it's identity, it's survival. And you, with your modern gut and picky palate, are about to learn that you wouldn't last long at the Aztec dinner table. A woman lays out tamales wrapped in corn husks, and the sight is familiar enough that you relax. You peel one open soft masa filled with beans and chili, steaming hot. The flavor bursts across your tongue. Smoky, spicy, slightly sour from the nixtamalization process that unlocks niacin in the corn. Without that chemical trick, populations dependent on maize often fell victim to malnutrition, but the Mexica had long since solved the problem. You take another bite and marvel that something so ancient feels so modern. But then you're offered a frothy cup, and things get weird. It's chocolate well cackle butt. Not the sweet candy bar kind, you know. This drink is bitter, spicy, whipped with froth, until it looks like foam floating on a dark sea. You sip cautiously, and your mouth fills with flavors of chili, vanilla, and something earthy. The locals drink it constantly, warriors, nobles, even merchants sealing deals. To them, it's energizing, sacred, prestigious. To you, it tastes like hot sauce, mixed with coffee grounds. Still, you force a smile, because spitting it out would probably get you cursed. Your host laughs kindly and offers pulque, the milky white fermented juice of the maguey plant. You hesitate. It smells faintly sour, like bread dough left too long in the sun. You take a sip, slightly sweet, slightly funky, a little fizzy. Imagine kombucha's weird cousin, and you're close. People drink this daily, but there are rules. Drunkenness is tolerated only among elders. If you, as a younger adult, stagger around tipsy, the punishment can be severe. Historians still argue whether every rule was enforced so harshly. But imagine explaining to a judge that you just had one too many when the law demands dignity. Suddenly, your weekend beer binge doesn't sound so appealing. As you nibble on tortillas, you notice baskets of strange additions. Roasted grasshoppers, seasoned with lime, crunchy water bugs, fried in oil, and even wriggling maguey worms, ready for the griddle. You blanch, but insects here aren't gross. They're protein, plentiful and practical. One quirky tidbit. Some sources suggest that toasted ants were a delicacy served with salt, crunchy little snacks to munch while chatting. You pop one in your mouth to be polite. It tastes nutty, not terrible, but your brain is screaming, this is bug food. The locals chuckle at your expression. Nearby, a man splits open an avocado, scoops out the creamy flesh, and smears it onto tortillas with chili and tomato. Guacamole familiar, safe, delicious. You sigh in relief. But then, another vendor serves amaranth seeds mixed with honey, pressed into little cakes. They taste like granola bars, but you overhear someone murmur that these same seeds were sometimes molded into ritual figurines, offered and then eaten. You glance at the cake in your hand. Was this dessert or devotion? You decide not to ask. Water is risky, so people drink a tole, a warm corn gruel flavored with fruit, or chocolate mixed with honey. It soothes your stomach, though the thick texture feels like drinking oatmeal. You're grateful anyway. But as you sit, you notice locals carefully sealing clay jars, storing tortillas in woven baskets, hanging chilies to dry. Food storage is serious business here. No refrigeration, no plastic wrapped, just centuries of careful methods to keep maize from molding and beans from sprouting prematurely. Lose your food supply, and you're not just hungry, you're desperate. You look around at the midday bustle. Everyone is eating together, families squatting in circles, merchants grabbing quick bites, even laborers pausing for tamales. It's communal, a reminder that food here is as much about belonging as survival. But you can't shake the unease. Every sip of pulque, every bite of tortilla, every handful of chapulines feels like a gamble for your fragile stomach. The locals laugh, satisfied, energized. You, meanwhile, pray you'll make it through the night without regretting those grasshoppers. And just when you think you've adjusted, someone passes by carrying a clay pot bubbling with something darker. Stew made from turkey, chilies, and sometimes even human flesh, though that last ingredient is debated endlessly by historians. Did ritual cannibalism happen widely, or was it exaggerated by Spanish chroniclers? Scholars still argue whether it was symbolic, rare, or shockingly common. You edge away from the pot before anyone notices your horrified face. By the time you stand, your stomach is full, but your nerves are rattled. You've eaten, yes, but you realize food in the Aztec world isn't just about flavor, it's law, it's ritual, it's risk. And every meal comes with a reminder. You're not built for this empire. You wipe your mouth on the back of your hand, still tasting chili and corn, when a bright flash of color catches your eye. It isn't a parrot or a pile of chilies, this time it's a person. Or rather, it's what they're wearing. A noble struts past, his cloak dyed deep turquoise, its hem embroidered with golden thread. A fan of shimmering quetzal feathers bobs above his head, each plume worth more than its weight in gold. Instantly, people in the crowd step aside, lowering their eyes, giving him space. You stand frozen, your half-chewed tortilla still in hand, realizing with a cold flush that you're underdressed, overdressed, or maybe just wrongly dressed. In the Aztec Empire, clothing is more than fashion, it's law. The tunic on your back, a plain cotton one borrowed from a kind stranger, might seem harmless. But here, fabric is a language. Commoners wear maguefaba cloth, scratchy and humble, while cotton is reserved for those who've earned or inherited the right. Feathers are even stricter. Only nobility can wear certain species, especially the iridescent tail feathers of the quetzal bird. Slip one of those into your headband without permission, and you're not just making a style faux pas, committing a crime. Historians still argue whether punishments for clothing violations were as extreme as recorded execution, for wearing the wrong headdress feels almost too rigid, but the fact remains, sumptuary laws were enforced, and they kept society's hierarchies stitched tightly together. You glance at your borrowed tunic again, wondering if it marks you as poor, foreign, or both. Either way, you're out of your depth. Around you, the plaza is alive with textiles. Women sit weaving on backstrap looms, pulling threads taut with rhythmic patience. The designs are geometric, mesmerizings, zags, diamonds, step fret patterns that echo temple architecture. Each pattern speaks a story: clan affiliation, social rank, even occupation. To your modern eye, it's decorative. To theirs, it's as informative as a uniform or a passport. You realize uncomfortably that you've been walking through the city naked in a cultural sense. A boy darts past wearing a simple maguey cloak, his legs bare and feet dusty. Behind him, a warrior in jaguar pelt armor strides by, obsidian clubs rattling at his side. The contrast is startling. One child of the fields, one predator of the battlefield, and both are perfectly legible to the people around them. You're the only unreadable figure here, like a glitch in the pattern. You pause to watch a featherworker at his stall. He plucks tiny turquoise feathers from a basket and carefully glues them into a mosaic shield, each one catching the light like a scale. The work is breathtaking, like painting with bird wings. A quirky tidbit: some of these feathers traveled hundreds of miles from tropical forests, carried by Pochteca merchants and guarded as treasures. You lean closer, mesmerized, until the artisan glares. He doesn't want your unworthy breath sullying his masterpiece. You shuffle back, muttering an apology. A woman nearby laughs at your discomfort. She explains, in broken words you just barely understand, that even hairstyles are regulated. Married women wear their hair in 2 long braids wrapped around their heads. Young girls let it hang loose. Warriors knot theirs in specific ways to show rank. If you tried to improvise, say with a messy, bunyewed look, bizarre at best, criminal at worst, imagine showing up to a royal banquet in pajama pants. Now imagine being executed for it. You think back to the noble with the turquoise cloak. He wasn't just showing off wealth, he was announcing power, prestige, and a direct tie to the emperor himself. You swallow hard, realizing that in this empire, your survival depends not only on what you do, but on what you wear. A loose thread, a misplaced feather, a cloak dyed the wrong shade, and suddenly you're marked for punishment. The weight of conformity presses down on you. In your world, individuality is prize blue hair, ripped jeans, ironic t-shirts. Here, individuality could kill you. And as you glance at your reflection in a patch of canal water, you see yourself for what you are, a badly dressed outsider in a world where fashion is law and mistakes are unforgivable. The afternoon sun bakes the streets, and you duck gratefully into the shade of a narrow alley. The din of the market fades, replaced by the quieter rhythms of domestic life. You've left the spectacle of cloaks and feathers behind, and now you're about to learn what home sweet home means in Tenochtitlan. Spoiler, it isn't much like the cozy, carpeted living room you know. You step through a low doorway into a courtyard house, the standard dwelling for families here. At first glance, it looks modest: adobe walls, a flat roof, rooms arranged around a central open space. But to locals, it's everything. Shelter, kitchen, workshop, and shrine rolled into one. The courtyard floor is swept smooth, a few clay pots resting neatly against the wall. A dog lifts its head lazily from the shade, probably a Zoloit, squintly, hairless and sleek, more practical than cute. They're companions, guardians, and, sometimes, dinner. You pet it gingerly, hoping today it's more pet than entree. The hearth dominates one corner of the courtyard. Women crouch on woven mats, grinding maize on matates. The stone surface grooved from years of steady use. The rhythm of stone against stone creates a soundscape as steady as a heartbeat. Without this, no tortillas, no tamales, no survival. The smell of ground corn dust mingles with wood smoke, earthy and familiar. You realize every meal here begins in this very spot, with patience and muscle. Your forearms ache just watching. Bathing, though, is surprisingly advanced. You're ushered toward a tamaskol, a small dome-shaped sweat bath. Stones heated outside are rolled in, water splashed to create steam, and suddenly the little chamber is filled with heat and humidity. You sit cross-legged, gasping at the intensity, while your hosts calmly rub their skin with herbs, chatting as if this is a spa day. And it is, in a way. Sweat baths are for hygiene, relaxation, and spiritual cleansing. Quirky tidbit: midwives even use tomaskals for postpartum care. You, however, feel like a boiled potato and stumble out red-faced, earning chuckles from the family. Water jars stand neatly lined up, filled from canals or aqueducts. You hesitate before drinking, remembering the parasites lurking in the lake. But the locals have tricks. They boil water or flavor it with lime juice and herbs to disguise odd tastes. You sip cautiously, still suspicious. Meanwhile, the children slurp it down. You can practically hear your immune system waving a white flag. Toilets. Let's just say primitive but practical. A clay pot in a corner, emptied daily, sometimes even collected by officials who use waste as fertilizer for It's efficient, but you wrinkle your nose. The smell clings no matter how often it's cleaned. You suddenly miss the anonymity of modern plumbing. Evening approaches, and chores continue. Clothes are washed in the courtyard, slapped rhythmically against stone, then hung to dry. Floors are swept constantly, because dust and insects are constant enemies. You join in, awkwardly wielding a broom made of reeds, but your clumsy strokes just scatter dirt around. A girl giggles at your efforts, whispering something that makes the others laugh. You're not offended, you'd laugh at yourself too. One historical debate still lingers in your mind. Just how clean was daily Aztec life compared to Europe at the same time? Some scholars argue the Mexica were far more hygienic, with daily bathing and ritual washing, while others point out the hazards of shared canals. Standing here, sweat drying on your skin after a tomascal, you're inclined to agree with the first group. But then you glance at the murky water jar again, and doubt creeps back in as twilight deepens. Incense is lit in a small shrine niche. A clay figure of a household god receives offerings of food and copal smoke. This isn't Sunday worship, it's nightly routine. Even in the privacy of home, the divine is never far away. You bow awkwardly, unsure whether to join in or stand aside. Either way, you feel eyes on you, measuring your sincerity. You realize that in this world, survival isn't just about food or water. It's about blending into rhythms so ancient they feel like law. Sweep the floor, grind the maize, bathe in steam, bow to the gods. Miss a beat, and you're the weak link. And in a city of hundreds of thousands, weak links are noticed by the time you curl up on a reed mat. The sounds of grinding, sweeping, and low voices still echo in your ears. Home life in the Aztec Empire isn't glamorous, but it's relentless. And for you, the outsider, it's another reminder. Even resting feels like hard work. Even resting feels like hard work. Morning mist still clings to the canals when you're ushered toward the steady clink of stone against stone. A rhythm different from the grinding of maize you heard yesterday. This isn't food preparation, it's work. And work here is more than just survival. It's obligation, identity, and discipline. You've stumbled into the world of Aztec artisans, and before long, you're choking on obsidian dust and realizing you're laughably unqualified for the job. A workshop sprawls open air beneath a canopy of woven mats. Men squat in rows, hammering cores of obsidian with stone tools, splitting them into razor-thin blades. The shards gleam like glass, black as night, sharper than any steel knife you've ever handled. One craftsman demonstrates by dragging a new blade across his arm-hair clean slice. No tug. You wince. These knives are surgical instruments, hunting tools, and sacrificial blades, all born from volcanic glass. You reach for one, curious, and immediately nick your fingertip. Blood wells up. The artisan laughs, shaking his head. Outside her hands, he mutters. You suck your finger, feeling both embarrassed and terrified. If a shaving cut feels this sharp, imagine what a warrior's club studied with obsidian could do. The workshop hums with quiet discipline. Apprentices, mostly young boys, sit on mats, carefully sweeping dust, fetching water, and watching every move. There's no freewheeling creativity here. Guilds oversee quality, and mistakes can mean punishment. Historians still argue how formal these craft guilds were. Were they rigid institutions or looser family trades? But the consistency of the products suggests rules ran tight. You'd never sneak in your own freestyle design here. A few stalls down, you find feather workers or a mob. Their benches are cluttered with trays of vibrant feathers, tiny splashes of green, yellow, and scarlet. With tweezers and patience, they arrange feathers into shields, fans, and headdresses so dazzling you almost forget they're fragile as moth wings. The work is meditative, each feather glued with resin in precise rows. Quirky tidbit. Some artisans plucked hummingbird feathers, minuscule, iridescent, nearly invisible, and layered them to create shimmering effects like holograms. You gape, and the artisan glares until you shuffle away. Apparently gawking too long is frowned upon. Next. A group of stonecutters chips away at statues, jaguar heads, maze gods, temple ornaments. The clang of hammer on basalt reverberates through your chest. Sweat glistens on their backs as they wrestle the heavy stone into form. You marvel at the endurance, but then you remember, this is daily life. Back-breaking labor is expected. Complaining isn't. If you collapsed from exhaustion here, you'd get little sympathy. A woman beckons you into a weaver's circle. Backstrap looms stretch taut across their laps, colorful threads pulled into geometric designs. Their fingers move so quickly it's hypnotic. Cotton, dyed with cochineal insects or indigo plants, forms cloaks and tunics destined for tribute or trade. You notice each design is purposeful: diamonds, spirals, step patterns. Nothing is random. One woman giggles at your attempt to touch the threads. She shakes her head. You'd tangle it, and she's retued, probably reduce hours of work into knots and seconds. Around the edge of the plaza, a scribe sits cross-legged, painting glyphs onto a mate bark paper. His brush is made from rabbit hair, his pigments ground from minerals. You lean closer and see tribute lists rows of cloaks, baskets, cacao beans owed by subject towns. Art isn't just decoration here. It's accounting, bureaucracy, politics. One misplaced glyph, and whole villages could be overtaxed. No pressure, right? Everywhere you look, labor is layered with duty. You think about your own modern job deadlines, emails, maybe the occasional staff meeting donut. Here, failing to deliver on a deadline doesn't just mean a bad review. It could mean losing your livelihood or even your freedom. Historians still debate how harshly artisans were punished for mistakes. But one thing is clear: there was no union grievance process waiting to back you up. Midday, guild officials make rounds, inspecting the workshops. Their gaze sweeps over you, lingers, then moves on. Relief floods your chest. You passed, maybe because they assume you're a useless apprentice still in training. You can't imagine lasting more than an hour at the obsidian bench, let alone years. Your hands already ache, your lungs burn with dust, and your pride is dented beyond repair. A boy beside you wipes sweat from his brow and grins. For him, this is the start of a life's craft. Honor bound to his calpula, the neighborhood unit that defines his role in society. For you, it's a reminder that survival here requires more than showing up. It demands skill, endurance, and unquestioning obedience. And with your clumsy fingers and wandering attention, you're already marked as an outsider. As the sun slants lower, the clang of stone, the hum of weaving, and the whisper of feathers blend into a chorus of labor. It's beautiful in its way, but relentless. You wipe your brow, silently admitting you'd never make it as an Aztec artisan. The day leans golden, shadows stretching across courtyards, when you find yourself drawn toward a crowd assembling near a stepped platform. The air thrums with anticipation, and suddenly you realize, this isn't work, this isn't commerce, it's worship. Religion here doesn't confine itself to temples or priests. It saturates streets, kitchens, workshops, and yes, even your schedule. You're about to discover how thoroughly the gods owned the Aztec. Clock. A priest in cotton robes, dusted with chalk, steps forward, scattering copal incense into a clay brazier. The sweet smoke curls skyward, coating your throat. Everyone hushes, bowing slightly as if the very air has thickened. You mimic them, though you have no idea which deity you're supposed to be honoring. Wrong move, wrong gesture, and you risk offending forces believed to hold life, death, and rainfall in their hands. You suddenly miss the simplicity of crossing yourself at a church door. The platform is small compared to the great temple, but even neighborhood shrines command respect. At its base, you see a painted figure of Tlaloc, the rain god bulging eyes, fangs, and goggle-like features. Children place flowers and tiny clay bowls of food at his feet. Someone presses your arm, gesturing that you too should offer something. You fumble, dropping a grasshopper from your lunch pouch. The locals chuckle softly. Well, it's the thought that counts, right? Everywhere you look, shrines pepper the city. Small alcoves hold figurines of maize deities. Corners host little altars smeared with flowers and food. Household guards guard kitchens, while neighborhood patrons keep markets orderly. There is no separation of sacred and secular. Step outside to fetch water, and you'll likely pass at least one shrine demanding a nod or a pinch of incense. It's exhausting, like living in a city where every traffic light is also a chapel. Calendars dictate it all. Not one, but two. The 260-day sacred calendar and the 365-day solar calendar, interlacing in complex cycles. Priests track them meticulously, declaring which days are lucky, which cursed, and which demand ritual offerings. Farmers plant by their guidance. Couples marry on auspicious dates. Even artisans start projects only when signs align. You glance up at the priest, now chanting rhythmic syllables, and realize he isn't just marking time, he's controlling it. Historians still argue how much ordinary people understood the calendar's intricacies, but everyone felt its effects. A young boy whispers that today is a festival day, though not one of the great ones. Even so, the streets buzz with preparations, women patting out tortillas for communal feasts, dancers painting their faces, musicians tuning drums. You stumble into the plaza as a troupe performs, their costumes painted with stripes, their feet pounding rhythms that make the ground vibrate. The air smells of flowers, sweat, and roasted maize. One quirky tidbit: some festivals required participants to fast beforehand, abstaining from salt or chili for days. Imagine enduring Aztec food without chili, like going to an Italian restaurant and skipping the pasta. You shudder at the thought. For them, though, it's devotion. For you, it would feel like cruel and unusual punishment. As the sun dips, torches flare to life, and the chants deepen. Priests in elaborate headdresses wave their arms, summoning gods with words you can't understand. Suddenly, a hush falls. A man steps forward carrying a bundle wrapped in white cotton. The crowd bows deeply. You freeze. Is this an offering? A symbol? Or gulp something more visceral? Historians still argue how often human sacrifice accompanied daily rituals versus larger state ceremonies. Tonight, you breathe relief when the bundle turns out to be maize, offered with solemnity, not blood. Your shoulders sag. Small mercies. But even without gore, the ceremony feels overwhelming. Time bends here. The drums echo in your chest. The incense clogs your lungs, and every gesture seems loaded with meaning you can't decode. The locals move seamlessly, bowing, chanting, clapping in rhythm. You stumble through, always half a beat behind. Survival here isn't just about food or shelter. It's about syncing your heartbeat with the gods. Timetable: when the ritual ends, people disperse as if nothing unusual has happened. Children laugh, merchants haggle, artisans return to their work. You stand dazed, the smoke still in your hair, realizing that for them, this isn't spectacle. It's daily life. For you, it's proof that in Tenochtitlan, Even the passage of hours belongs to deities you barely know. And as you shuffle back toward the glow of home fires, one truth settles heavy. You can't escape religion here. Not in temples, not in markets, not even in your own bed. The gods demand attention every waking moment. And for someone like you, forgetful, skeptical, clumsy, that's a recipe for trouble. Asterisk, the drums find you again before dawn. Low and steady, like a heartbeat echoing through the stone streets. Your stomach nods. This rhythm doesn't signal a festival dance or a market bustle. This is different, heavier, slower, ceremonial. People pour into the plaza without chatter, faces set in solemn lines. You shuffle along with them, pulled by the tide, until the looming bulk of the Templo Mayor towers over you. Its twin staircases stretch skyward, one dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, god of sun and war, the other to Tlaloc, the rainbringer. The torches burn brighter than the morning sun, and you realize you're about to witness the kind of ritual that tourists in your century whisper about, but never imagine smelling firsthand. The priests appear first. Their cotton garments are stiff with chalk, their hair matted, their bodies smeared with ash. They move like shadows, bearing obsidian knives that glint cruelly in the light. Incense braziers cough smoke, filling your nostrils with a sweet, acrid sting. You cough quietly, but no one else reacts there, two absorbed eyes fixed on the pyramid steps. The crowd sways in rhythm with the drums, a hypnotic pulse that pulls you deeper into the moment. A line of captives ascends the steps, guarded by warriors in jaguar and eagle regalia. The captives' faces are painted, their bodies adorned with feathers and flowers, transforming them into living offerings. You freeze. You've read about this in history books, sure, but reading and standing in the thick of it are two different beasts. Sweat beads on your palms, and you suddenly wish you could vanish into the stone itself. At the top platform, the priests circle the first captive. Chants rise, harsh syllables that scrape at your ears. You can't understand the words, but the intent is clear. This is a gift to the gods, fuel for the sun's fire. The man is laid back on a stone slab, his chest arched to the sky. The drumbeat quickens, your own heartbeat stumbling to keep up. The knife flashes. The crowd gasps as one, not in horror, but in reverence. You look away too late, eyes catching the movement, the offering raised skyward. It's too much. You sway on your feet, the smell of copal mingling with something metallic on the breeze. Your throat tightens, and you clutch your stomach, fighting the urge to retch. Around you, though people bow deeply, some even weep in gratitude. To them, this isn't cruelty, it's necessity. The sun's path across the sky depends on it. Historians still argue about the scale of sacrifice. Was it thousands upon thousands each year, or a more symbolic number, magnified by Spanish accounts eager to shock European audiences? Standing here, you don't know which version is true. All you know is that one death feels immense, heavy enough to rattle your bones. Multiply that by hundreds, and you wonder how anyone could carry on. Yet the crowd seems lighter now, as if a cosmic debt has been paid. One quirky detail pierces the solemnity. Some sources suggest that participants, even those destined to die, were sometimes treated like honored guests before hand-fed fine meals, dressed in splendid clothes. A grim perk package, you'd think, before meeting the obsidian. You catch yourself almost laughing at the absurdity, then clamp down, realizing this is neither the time nor place for gallows humor. The ceremony continues, a rhythm of offering and reverence. You lose track of time, the smoke and drums weaving a trance around you. By the time the rituals conclude, the sun is high, blazing down as if fueled by what just transpired. People file out peacefully, murmuring prayers of thanks. Children skip, vendors reopen stalls, life resumes. You stumble with them, dazed, your shirt clinging with sweat. Later, in a shaded courtyard, you overhear two locals debating. One insists the gods demand blood daily, that without it the world would collapse into darkness. The other shrugs, arguing that grand ceremonies suffice, that smaller offerings, flowers, food, incense can balance the scales. You cling to that second view, desperate to believe not every dawn begins in blood. But you realize quickly, whichever side is right, you're still trapped in a world where death is currency, and you don't have nearly enough to pay your way. As dusk settles, the drums finally still. You close your eyes, but their echo lingers inside your skull. You can't unsee what you saw, and worse, you know tomorrow the cycle will start again. For the Aztecs, this is continuity, sacred duty. For you, it's another reminder. You wouldn't last a day here, not with your knees trembling at every drumbeat the next morning. You're awoken not by birds or the gentle splash of canoes, but by shouting. It takes a moment to orient yourself. This isn't market banter. It's the sound of the law in motion. Kalpuli courts are in session, and as an outsider, you've been swept unwittingly into their domain. You shuffle closer, curious and terrified. Even the cobblestones seem to hum with authority. Hear one wrong word, and you could be hauled into a circle of elders who enforce order with both custom and muscle. The plaza where the court meets is smaller than the main market square, but no less intimidating. A circle of elders sits cross-legged on mats, robes clean and stiff, faces carved into permanent frowns. A man kneels before them, head bowed, accused of theft. He sweats, mutters excuses, and presents evidence. A bundle of maize that isn't his. His neighbor, a burly woman, testifies against him. The elders confer quietly, nodding at one another like chess masters plotting moves you cannot see. You realize instantly, this is a world where verbal agility is survival. Speak wrong and you're sunk. The verdict is pronounced, a fine, a beating, and a public apology. The man bows again, the crowd murmurs, and life resumes. It's brutal in its efficiency, yet precise chaos is kept at bay by ritualized justice. Historians still argue whether these courts were uniformly fair or heavily biased towards social elites. But for the common people, rules were rules, and nobody wanted to test them. You wince at the idea of being called before this circle. Forget small mistakes at work here. A misstep can echo for weeks, even months. Nearby, a different case unfolds. A young boy has been caught lying about his chores. He's punished with public humiliation. Basket of ashes poured over his head while his peers laugh. You feel an odd mixture of schadenfreude and horror, wondering if you could survive that kind of shame. In modern terms, it's like being TikTok famous for doing something wrong, but worse. Because failure in this empire carries immediate consequences. The elders don't only judge minor theft or laziness. Laws against adultery, disrespecting rank, or even neglecting religious duties are enforced with equal rigor. One historical debate is whether corporal punishment was as common as the records suggest, or if chroniclers exaggerated to depict the empire as harsh and exotic. Either way, watching a young man receive lashes for arguing with a neighbor convinces you that exaggeration is unnecessary. This society is unforgiving enough on its own. You wander closer to observe the tools of justice. Wooden staffs, obsidian-tipped implements, and even ritualized ropes used to restrain the accused. One striking image lingers, an elder stepping forward, staff in hand, to guide the kneeling man without raising his voice. Authority isn't just force, here it's theater, a carefully choreographed blend of intimidation and decorum. The crowd absorbs the lesson silently. You try to mimic the respectful bow, though you're painfully aware that you might bow too deeply or risking offense. A quirky tidbit. Some courts reportedly used loud drumming to punctuate verdicts. A sensory hammering that underscored the gravity of law. Imagine a judge banging a drum instead of slamming a gavel, startling, dramatic, and oddly hypnotic. You flinch each time, reminding yourself that even sound is part of the enforcement machinery here by midday. The courts have cycled through multiple cases. Fines, lashings, public apologies, and careful warnings, all delivered in a rhythm that keeps the city humming. You step back, stomach tight, realizing that while you might navigate markets, festivals, and home life, the legal sphere is another beast entirely. One careless word, one misunderstood gesture, and you're as good as dead, or at least as good as enslaved. You retreat to a quiet corner, heart pounding, marveling at the discipline and precision that governs Tenochtitlan. In a modern city, minor infractions are met with bureaucracy, forms, or polite warnings. Here, justice is immediate, visible, and relentless. And for someone like you, a wandering outsider with clumsy instincts and a nervous temperament, the lesson is terrifyingly clear. This is a world where the law is alive, breathing in your face, and you wouldn't last a single day under its gaze. As the sun tilts westward, casting long shadows across the canals, your guide nudges you toward the sound of splashing water. Today, you'll see the Aztec military in action, not on a distant battlefield, but training right in the city. The clatter of wooden clubs, the thud of sandals against dirt, and the rhythmic shouts of warriors cut through the afternoon air. You feel a pang of dread. Combat isn't a game here, and your modern idea of self-defense, maybe a karate class or a dodgeball match, suddenly seems laughably inadequate. The training ground is a rectangular plaza near the temple, flanked by walls and watched by eager spectators. Young men in jaguar and eagle regalia line up, holding obsidian-edged makuaweetles, the terrifying wooden swords embedded with razor-sharp blades. One warrior demonstrates a strike, slicing through a reed mat with ease. You flinch, realizing that a casual misstep in your presence could sever a finger or worse. Historians still debate whether makuaweetles could really cleave skulls in a single blow, or if chroniclers exaggerated for shock value. But from where you stand, there's no exaggeration needed. The weapons gleam and look deadly enough. Warriors chant as they move in formation, bodies taut with discipline. Footwork is precise, spins timed to drum beats, thrusts executed with grace and lethal intent. You try to mimic the stance with your legs spread and wooden staff in hand. Okay. A twig butt wobble instantly. A boy nearby snickers. You retreat, muttering apologies. This is a place where physical clumsiness is conspicuous and unforgiving, a visible marker of your outsider status. Nearby, a group practices ritual dances that double as martial training. Shields clash, spears jab, and chants rise in a cadence that merges devotion with combat readiness. A quirky tidbit: some scholars suggest these dances mimic historical battles, teaching young warriors strategy and stamina while pleasing the gods simultaneously. You gape at the dual-purpose exercise, training, and divine homage all at once. Your high school gym class suddenly feels tragically simplistic. The commanding officer, a tall man in jaguar pelt and painted body, calls a line forward. A new recruit demonstrates his skills with The officer frowns, signaling corrections, demonstrating strikes with terrifying precision. Sweat gleams on every body, muscles taut and breathing synchronized. You can barely keep your balance watching, let alone imagine joining in. Mistakes here don't just risk embarrassment, they could mean injury or worse. Your guide explains that warriors are elite citizens, bound by code and duty. Success in training guarantees status, respect, and even economic benefits. Failure brings shame and potential demotion. In a society obsessed with hierarchy and honor, status isn't just about privilege, about survival. You realize, with a sinking feeling, that you'd fail spectacularly. Even an afternoon of standing awkwardly here marks you as hopeless. Food for thought. Aztec military life was intertwined with religion. Captives taken in war often became offerings, linking martial success with cosmic order. You watch a ceremonial mock capture, where a warrior falls to another in a stylized but convincing maneuver, and the crowd cheers. The line between game and lethal reality is thin. Historians still argue how much ritualized combat prepared warriors for actual battle, but the tension is palpable in the plaza. A sudden shout punctuates the training. A young jaguar-clad warrior demonstrates an acrobatic jump, lands perfectly, and the crowd erupts. You try to clap, but your timing is off. A small child nearby laughs at you. You glance at your guide, who shrugs. "Not everyone is born to fight," he says, and you can only nod in agreement, imagining your own defeat in the next mock duel as the sun begins to dip behind the pyramids. The warriors line up for final drills, their movements synchronized, bodies moving in ways that feel almost superhuman. You watch, heart pounding, imagining yourself in their sandals. No, in your sneakers. Even in sneakers, you'd fall flat on your face before you completed a single drill. And as the crowd disperses, laughter, conversation, and the slap of sandals on dirt mingle into the evening air. You retreat toward your courtyard, legs trembling, your mind still echoing with the clang of mature wheatles and the cadence of chants. Another truth crystallizes. Physical prowess, discipline, and precision are mandatory here. For someone like you, untrained, clumsy, and perpetually off rhythm, the Aztec military world is not just alien, it's lethal. And that's yet another day you would fail to survive. Twilight settles over Tenochtitlan, painting the canals with molten gold and stretching shadows from the towering pyramids. You think you've seen the full spectrum of Aztec life markets. Temples, homes, workshops, military drills. But night is a different kind of trial. Streets that were bustling with commerce and ritual now shift into a tense rhythm of caution. Darkness amplifies danger. Thieves, stray dogs, and the ever-present possibility of missteps in a society where rules do not sleep. You trudge along, every creak of a dock, plank, or splash of water setting your nerves on edge. The first thing you notice is the smoke from cooking fires mingled with damp earth, and the faintly sweet aroma of roasting maize. Families sit on mats outside their homes, finishing meals, chatting in low voices. You realize that even as night falls, life continues on a schedule governed by duty and domestic labor. Nobody lingers idly. You remember your own evening routines, at home Netflix, scrolling. Snack runs in, feel both amused and profoundly unfit for this world. Suddenly, voices shout from the canal. You spin to see a pair of boys racing a canoe against each other, splashing water as they go. This is recreation, but it's intense and physically demanding. A small crowd cheers, watching the agility and speed of the young paddlers. You try to imagine joining, gripping the sides of a canoe, and immediately feel that your balance would betray you in seconds. It's entertaining for the locals, terrifying for you. Your guide points toward a house where a family is conducting evening prayers at a household altar. Candles flicker, incense curls into the warm night air, and offerings of maize, flowers, and tamales lie neatly arranged. Worship isn't over just because the sun has set. Gods demand attention at all hours, and the people comply with a serenity that makes your modern bedtime rituals look sloppy. One quirky detail: even pets are sometimes included in prayers, particularly dogs, considered guides for the afterlife. You give the Zoloid Squintly a tentative pat, hoping you don't accidentally disrespect it. You continue along narrow lanes, ducking under woven reed canopies. Children play quietly with makeshift toys, rattles, spinning tops, balls of stitched cloth, but there is no reckless shouting. Safety is internalized. Everyone knows the stakes. A boy trips and immediately checks for injury before anyone can scold him. Discipline in small things is drilled from an early age. And you, clumsy and distracted, feel conspicuously alien. Suddenly, the distant sound of a drum sends a shiver down your spine. It's part of a night ritual, one intended to honor a lesser-known deity, perhaps related to protection or the underworld. Historians still argue which gods were honored nightly and why. The record is fragmentary and debated. For you, though, the drum is a warning. The empire is never truly at rest. Even under moonlight, obligations continue. Whether you understand them or not, a vendor wheels out a cart of roasted insects, offering them to workers returning from late duties. You grimace at the sight, but can't help noticing the efficiency protein on demand. Energy for laborers, no waste. You nibble politely on a chapulin, regretting it instantly. The locals chuckle at your hesitation. You think of modern snack stutos, energy bars, and the thought makes you laugh, realizing that your safe foods would leave you weak here. As you edge closer to your temporary quarters, a group of young warriors practices quietly under the torchlight, moving in formations that echo daytime drills. Their shadows stretch long, exaggerated, intimidating. You remind yourself, night doesn't lower the bar. Discipline, vigilance, and coordination are demanded from dawn until dusk, and the faintest lapse could have consequences. Finally, you reach the courtyard. The household is quiet now, lamps casting soft glows. A small fire flickers in the hearth. You sink onto the mat, exhausted. Every step today has been a test of observation, agility, and restraint. Markets challenged your nerves. Workshops crushed your hands. Temples assaulted your comprehension. The military threatened your body. And now the night itself has tested your alertness. One thought crystallizes in your mind. Tenochtitlan is a city that never lets you relax. And your modern habits would be catastrophic here. As you close your eyes, the sounds of distant drums and soft conversations wash over you. Even in rest, vigilance is required. Sleep is not leisure, it's another layer of adaptation you've barely begun to understand. And somewhere, deep down, you know that surviving a single night is a victory in itself. Dawn creeps into Tenochtitlan like liquid gold spilling over the temples, and you realize the cycle begins again. The city stirs, and you stumble out into streets already buzzing with life. Today, you're meant to witness the tribute system firsthand, a mechanism that fuels the empire, feeds the nobility, and keeps society balanced, but also terrifies outsiders like you. Every item of tribute, every gesture, every exchange carries weight beyond the obvious. You swallow, feeling the full gravity of what it means to live here. The canals are already alive with canoes, laden with goods from surrounding provinces. Maize, cacao, textiles, obsidian, and exotic feathers bob in the water. Guided by Pochteca merchants, the long-distance traders who serve as both economic agents and spies. The sight is mesmerizing, tiny wooden vessels dancing across reflective waters, perfectly coordinated, each carrying a piece of a vast political puzzle. You think about your modern supply chains, Amazon deliveries, UPS trucks, and realize that these merchants were the veins of an empire, and one misstep could collapse the flow. On the causeways, commoners march in lines, delivering local tribute, baskets of vegetables, bundles of cotton, jars of chili, sacks of beans. Each item is counted, weighed, and inspected by officials. A single mistake, overcounted sack, a damaged bundle can result in punishment. You watch a man nervously present his maize, sweat running down his back, hoping the overseer doesn't spot the tiniest imperfection. Historians still argue how strict inspections truly were, but the anxiety etched on his face suggests that compliance is non-negotiable. You glance at your own hands, thinking of all the ways you would fail. The Pochteca pass along the causeway, observing everything. Their eyes are trained for subtle details. Who carries what? Which towns supply correctly? Who might be skirting obligations? They are traders, diplomats, and intelligence agents all rolled into one. One quirky tidbit. Some Pochteca was said to carry messages sewn into their clothing, hidden in seams, ready to report to the emperor himself. You shiver at the thought of being watched so closely, or every gesture under scrutiny. The nobility oversees the flow of tribute from a raised platform. They are adorned with the richest feathers, gold jewelry, and bright cloths. A visual reminder that power flows from obedience and wealth. You realize instantly that hierarchy here is omnipresent, codified not just by laws and dress, but by every exchange of goods. To misstep is not only socially dangerous, but economically and politically consequential. A boy beside you whispers that some provinces send exotic animals, parrots, jaguar skins, even living monkeys as tribute. These creatures are both status symbols and ritual tools, symbols of the empire's reach. You crane your neck to see one, and a parrot squawks, startling you. The boy laughs, pointing out how foreigners always jump at noise or motion. You mutter an apology, realizing that in Tenochtitlan, even fear is visible. As baskets are unloaded, counted, and recorded on bark paper, your stomach tightens. You notice small details. Officials mark discrepancies with colored chalk. Some items are redirected to temples, some stored for distribution to nobles. Everything is measured, nothing wasted, and everything carries meaning. The tribute system isn't just logistics, it's ritualized control, a living testament to the empire's sophistication. By midday, the sun has climbed and the plaza is a controlled chaos of activity. Vendors, officials, traders, and laborers move in precise patterns. You attempt to follow along, carrying a small bundle of beans for demonstration, only to fumble and nearly drop it. A sharp glance from an official freezes you in place. You recover quickly, but your face burns. Another reminder here. Even minor mistakes are conspicuous. As the sun tilts west, you finally step back, exhausted. You've witnessed the tribute's complexity, the logistics, the inspections, the hierarchy, the discipline. Survival in this system requires perfect attention, unerring compliance, and stamina you simply don't possess. And you realize, with growing dread, that missing even a single cue could be disastrous by the time you retreat to your courtyard, arms aching from imaginary labor. You understand more clearly than ever. The Aztec tribute system isn't just administration, it's a daily, relentless assertion of power, and you are laughably unprepared to navigate it. The evening falls faster than you expect, shadows stretching across the canal like dark fingers. You trudge toward the great causeway leading to the ceremonial district, aware that night in Tenochtitlan carries its own perils. The city doesn't sleep, not really. Even as lamps flicker to life, merchants tally coins, guards patrol the streets, and families continue to honor household gods. You begin to understand. Survival here isn't a day's challenge, it's continuous vigilance. A 24-hour ordeal that stretches every fiber of your attention and endurance. Your guide nudges you toward a massive plaza crowded with people preparing for a festival. Torches flare, illuminating painted faces and intricate costumes. Children run with small rattles, dancers adjust feathered headdresses, and musicians strike drums and flutes in a rhythm that seems to echo the heartbeat of the city itself. You take a deep breath and remind yourself, participate or be conspicuously ignorant. A misstep here could signal disrespect, and that's dangerous. A group of acolytes carries large clay vessels filled with pulque, the fermented maguey drink you cautiously sampled before. The sweet, sour, frothy liquid is passed among the dancers and musicians. Quirky tidbit, some scholars suggest pulque was even used in ritual competitions, where bravery or endurance could be measured by how much one could drink before faltering. You step back, imagining your modern tolerance tragically insufficient. The crowd laughs softly at your hesitation, no doubt thinking you are a nervous foreigner. The dancers begin their performance. Bodies painted in bold colors, masks resembling jaguars, eagles, and serpents. Every movement has purpose, each step aligned to drum beats, each spin synchronized with song. Historians still argue whether these dances were purely symbolic or trained combat routines disguised as celebration. But watching them, you can't separate artistry from preparation. You try a cautious imitation, your legs wobbling uncontrollably, earning a chuckle from a small child nearby. Meanwhile, elders oversee the festival offerings. Bowls of maize, cacao flowers, and other foodstuffs are placed at shrines or handed to priests. Even in celebration, every action reinforces hierarchy and duty. You realize that merriment and ritual are inseparable here. Joy is structured, expressive, yet bound by rules. Your modern idea of a carefree festival dancing, eating, shouting feels crude by comparison. A commotion draws your gaze. A Pochteca merchant has arrived, parading exotic goods from distant lands to jaguar skins, colorful feathers, and even strange fruits unknown to your eyes. The crowd reacts with awe and excitement. These merchants aren't just traders, they are conduits of empire, carriers of information, wealth, and prestige. One misstep in dealing with them, one disrespectful word, could mark you as incompetent or insolent as night deepens. torches illuminate the Templo Mayor. The festival's central rituals are performed at its base chants, dances, and small offerings to gods, ensuring the city's protection and prosperity. You find yourself awash in the mixture of smoke, sound, and color. Your senses feel simultaneously overwhelmed and alive. You try to mimic the gestures, bowing awkwardly, aware that you're hopelessly clumsy. Even with careful observation, your timing is off. Even your breathing feels out of sync with the rhythm. By the end of the evening, exhaustion presses on you like a physical weight. The festival continues without pause, but you retreat to your courtyard, each step an effort. Your muscles ache, your mind is buzzing with observation, and your stomach is tired from constant vigilance and strange foods. Yet, beneath the fatigue, there's awe, the coordination, devotion, and endurance of Tenochtitlan's citizens are extraordinary. As you collapse onto your mat, you realize that survival here is about more than diet, labor, or obedience. It's endurance, adaptation, and constant attention to nuanced qualities you possess only in small doses. One more day, one more ritual, one more festival, and you're not sure you'd last. The city hums around you, a relentless rhythm you can't escape, reminding you yet again, you are, undeniably, an outsider, undeniably, an outsider. The sun is barely a sliver on the horizon when you are nudged awake by the soft patter of feet on stone. Today, the city feels quieter, though you know better. Tenochtitlan never truly rests. Even the calm mornings are busy with unseen labor merchants tallying goods, artisans preparing materials, priests readying offerings. You trudge through alleys slick with dew, senses alert to every sound, every movement. After 2 weeks of observation, every sound, scent, and gesture signals survival, hierarchy, or duty. You realize that in this city, even idleness has a cost. You find yourself at the chinampas, the floating gardens that feed the city. Water glints between narrow plots of vibrant crops, maize, beans, squash, chilies all arranged in neat rows. Farmers move along the banks, carefully planting, watering, and tending. You kneel awkwardly, attempting to mimic a planting motion, and immediately feel the sticky mud seeping between your fingers. Historians still debate whether chinampas could yield up to 7 harvests per year, or if such numbers were occasional peaks. But standing here, you can see why the city thrived. It's astonishing productivity, but also exhausting labor, and you doubt your stamina could match even a single season. The labor is both physical and ritual. Offerings are made to the water spirits and earth deities before planting and harvesting. You remember previous rituals, the incense, the bows, the chants. It never stops. Even sowing seeds is a sacred act, a covenant with unseen powers. One quirky detail, some farmers place small clay figurines among crops to protect against pests or invoke fertility. You gingerly touch one, and a child nearby giggles at your awkwardness. You blush, but leave it intact. Returning to the city center, you see a procession of young nobles preparing for a ceremonial march. Their bodies painted, feathers arranged meticulously, they move with precision, rehearse steps echoing generations of custom. You try to follow along, imitating their movements, but your coordination collapses in seconds. Sweat drips down your back. You're painfully aware that rhythm, balance, and timing are survival skills here. One wrong move could signal disrespect or incompetence. The day unfolds with more lessons in hierarchy and endurance. Markets swell with merchants trading exotic goods from the far reaches of the empire. obsidian, jaguar pelts, colorful feathers, cacao, and rare stones. Pochteca pass along news from distant lands, their presence a reminder of Tenochtitlan's vast political and economic reach. You fumble in the crowd, almost stepping on a basket of precious feathers, earning a sharp glance. Survival in this world demands vigilance at all moments. Later, you observe a small-scale ritual in a local temple. The priest guides participants through offerings of food, incense, and small figurines. The choreography is subtle yet exacting. Every gesture carries meaning. You mimic a bow, the incense smoke tickling your nose. You feel out of sync, your movements clumsy, the timing of your gestures off. The priest's eyes sweep over you briefly, and you bow lower, hoping he interprets it as respect rather than incompetence. By evening, exhaustion has layered over you like a heavy cloak. The marketplace hums as merchants pack up, children return home, and the city begins to settle into a quieter rhythm. You walk back to your courtyard, muscles sore, mind racing with every observation. 2 weeks of immersion have revealed the intensity, discipline, and ritual embedded in every action of Aztec life. You feel both awe and despair, knowing that you lack the physical stamina, cultural literacy, and constant vigilance to endure here. Lying on your reed mat, you reflect on everything: the food, the labor, the markets, the ceremonies, the military, the laws, the tribute, the gods. The sheer structure and expectation of Aztec life is beautiful but relentless. Every action is observed, measured, and meaningful. You can survive a few hours or a single day, but an extended stay, you'd be exhausted, humiliated, and likely punished. And that's before even attempting the physical trials or navigating the social hierarchies. You close your eyes, letting the distant drumbeats, soft conversations, and lapping water wash over you. One truth settles in your mind: the Aztec Empire demands total adaptation, and you, with your modern habits, distracted attention, and delicate constitution, wouldn't last a day now. Take a slow, deep breath. Let your shoulders release, the muscles unclenching from the memory of stone streets and spinning drums. Picture the city from a distance: the pyramids, the canals, the chinampas shimmering in the sun, peaceful now, as if frozen in quiet reflection. Imagine walking down a calm street, the smells of maize and flowers soft in the air, the people moving in gentle rhythm around you, your heartbeat slowing to match theirs. The sun dips gently, painting the canals in warm light. Even in a world so intense, there is grace. The laughter of children, the quiet devotion of artisans, the soft chant of prayer in the evening air. These are reminders that life, even under rigorous demands, carries beauty. You feel the weight of the day lifting, the sights and sounds folding into memory rather than anxiety. Let the whispers of the city fade, replaced by your own steady breathing. Your hands, once trembling with the awe and terror of unfamiliarity, now rest easily. The lessons of survival, hierarchy, and ritual can recede for a while, leaving only the comforting cadence of calm now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and imagine drifting into rest. You are safe here, outside the demands of empire, cushioned in modern comfort. Let the warmth of that safety seep into every corner of your body, and as your thoughts soften, carry a gentle appreciation for the complexity, endurance, and vibrancy of a world you could not live in, but could admire from afar. You breathe slowly, deeply, letting sleep claim you. Tomorrow, the city and its lessons will remain in memory, but your body rests, restored. You made it through imagination, observation, and empathy to witness life that would otherwise overwhelm anyone unprepared. End of script. Sweet dreams,